I spent my entire career wrestling with infinity. Every equation I wrote, every path integral I calculated, every time I summed over an infinite number of possibilities to find out how a single photon moves from here to there. Infinity was my tool, my instrument. But I never met the man who made it possible. Georg Cantor died 4 months before I was born. He died in a sanatorium, away from his family, malnourished, still writing letters asking to come home. And the mathematics he built, the one that cost him his mind, is underneath every equation I ever wrote. He looked into infinity and saw something no one had ever seen. Structure, size, a hidden architecture, inside something everyone else thought was formless. And the most powerful mathematician in Germany declared war on him. He called him a corrupter of youth. He blocked his publications. He tried to end his career, because Cantor had seen something that terrified them all. Everything Cantor became starts here. The brilliance, the obsession, the madness. Let me go back to the beginning. Georg Cantor was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, in 1845. His father was a successful merchant, practical, cultured, a man with a deep love of the arts, but who wanted his son to become an engineer. But young Georg had a gift that could not be hidden. His mathematics teachers saw it immediately. The boy did not just solve problems. He saw through them. He moved through arithmetic the way a musician moves through scales, effortlessly, impatiently, always reaching for something beyond the page. By age 15, his exceptional abilities in mathematics were obvious to everyone around him. His teachers noted it. His tutors noted it. The boy was operating at a level that could not be explained by hard work alone. His father resisted. An engineer makes a living. A mathematician makes nothing. But you cannot argue with a mind like that. Eventually, he gave in. Georg Cantor went to study at the Polytechnic in Zurich. When his father died in 1863, Cantor used his inheritance to transfer to the University of Berlin. And this is where he met the man who would try to destroy him. Leopold Kronecker was one of the most powerful mathematicians in Germany. Brilliant, influential, wealthy. He controlled who got published, who got hired, who got recognized. If you wanted a career in German mathematics, you needed Kronecker's approval. Kronecker had a belief that he held like religion. He said, "God made the integers, and all else is the work of man. Only whole numbers, finite counting, things you can finish." That was real mathematics. Everything else, every abstraction, every leap into the infinite, was nonsense. Dangerous nonsense. Remember that. Because the young student sitting in his lecture hall was about to prove him wrong about everything. Cantor graduated. He was talented, ambitious, and eager. He wanted a position at Berlin, the most prestigious mathematics department in the world, where Kronecker ruled. He did not get it. Instead, he was sent to the University of Halle. It was a small, unremarkable school in a small, unremarkable town. A dead end. He would stay there for the rest of his life, his entire career. While the mathematical world revolved around Berlin, Cantor sat in Halle. He had a wife, 6 children, a home, but professionally he was stranded. He taught students who would never understand what he was working on. He wrote papers that the most powerful man in mathematics was trying to suppress. He was isolated, cut off from the people who should have been his peers. But it was there, in that isolation, far from the gatekeepers, that Cantor's mind opened a door no one knew existed. He asked a question that sounds insane. How big is infinity? Think about that. Infinity is infinity. It goes on forever. How can one forever be bigger than another? But Cantor found a way to answer it. He looked at the natural numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, going on forever. That is one infinity. You can list them. You can count them, even if the counting never ends. Then he looked at all the real numbers. Every decimal, every fraction, every irrational number, like pi, every point on a number line. And he asked, can you match them up, 1 to 1? He proved you cannot. No matter how clever your system, there will always be real numbers your list misses. Always. The proof was elegant, unexpected, and so deep that mathematicians are still unpacking it today. The real numbers are a bigger infinity than the natural numbers, not a little bigger. Fundamentally, provably, structurally bigger. That was 1874. Cantor was 29 years old, and he was just getting started. 3 years later, he proved something even stranger. He showed that a line and a plane, a one-dimensional object and a two-dimensional object, contain the same number of points, the same infinity. Dimension itself seemed to dissolve. He wrote to his colleague Richard Dedekind. His words were, "I see it, but I don't believe it." He kept going deeper. He found not just two infinities, but an entire hierarchy, an infinite taos of infinities, each one larger than the last, rising without end. He gave them names. Aleph null for the smallest, Aleph 1 for the next, and upward, forever, an infinite number of infinities. Think about what I am telling you. This man, alone in Halle, had discovered the architecture of the infinite, the scaffolding underneath all of mathematics, and here is where everything falls apart. Kronecker heard what Cantor was claiming, and he was furious. This was everything he had warned against. Cantor was not just playing with infinity. He was saying it was real, that it had structure, that it had size, that you could do mathematics with it the same way you do mathematics with the number 3. Kronecker called him a corrupter of youth, a scientific charlatan. He used his power to block Cantor's publications in Krell's journal. He made it clear that Cantor was not welcome at Berlin, and he ensured that the most prestigious mathematics department in the world would never offer Cantor a chair. And it was not just Kronecker. Henri Poincaré, one of the greatest mathematicians in France, referred to Cantor's ideas as a grave disease infecting mathematics. A disease. I know something about what that feels like. Let me tell you about the worst day of my early career. April 1948. The Pocono Conference, a small meeting in the mountains of Pennsylvania. Every major physicist in the world was in that room. Bohr, Dirac, Wigner, Oppenheimer. I was 29 years old and I had developed something new, a way of calculating how particles interact using little diagrams, pictures, lines bouncing off each other. I got up to present. I was excited. I thought what I had was beautiful. No one could follow me. Not one person in that room understood what I was doing. And then Niels Bohr, the man who built the foundations of quantum mechanics, stood up. He told me I had forgotten the uncertainty principle, that I could not draw trajectories for particles, that what I was showing them violated everything they knew about how the quantum world works. He was wrong. My diagrams were correct. But in that moment, standing at the blackboard with every giant in physics staring at me like I had lost my mind, I felt it. That cold flash. Am I the one who is wrong? Have I made a fool of myself? That feeling lasted an afternoon. By the next year, people were using my diagrams. Within a decade, they were everywhere. Now imagine that feeling and stretch it across 30 years. No resolution, no vindication, just the doubt, growing louder every day. That was Cantor's life. Let me make sure you understand what is happening here. A man sees something true, something that will reshape every branch of mathematics for the next century. And the most powerful minds in the world are calling it a disease, calling him a charlatan, trying to erase him. And he has almost no one. His old teacher Weierstrass supported him, but Weierstrass was aging and no match for Kronecker's political power. Just a desk in Halle and the knowledge that he is right. Alone. In 1884, 10 years into this war, Cantor broke. He fell into a deep, paralyzing depression. He could not work. He could not think. He could not get out of bed. He was hospitalized. He recovered, slowly. But something had shifted. He asked to be allowed to lecture on philosophy instead of mathematics. He began corresponding with Catholic theologians about the nature of God and infinity. He drifted further from the fight. In the years that followed, he grew obsessed with proving that Francis Bacon was the true author of Shakespeare's plays. He published pamphlets and wrote long, detailed arguments. A man who had seen the structure of the infinite was now chasing literary conspiracies. Some historians see this as a man losing his grip. I see it differently. I see a man who had stared into something so vast that ordinary mathematics could no longer contain what he was feeling. He had looked into the face of infinity. Where else do you go after that? Let me tell you what infinity feels like from the inside. When I was working on quantum electrodynamics at Cornell, I needed to calculate what happens when an electron emits and reabsorbs a photon. Simple question. The answer required summing over an infinite number of possible interactions. Not a large number. Infinite. Every possible way the electron could interact with the electromagnetic field. All at once. My path integrals, the Feynman diagrams that people put on t-shirts, only work because infinity has structure. Because you can add infinities, compare them, cancel them against each other. The mathematics I used every day, measure theory, functional analysis, infinite dimensional spaces, all of it traces back through layers of work by other mathematicians to the foundations Cantor laid. But back to Cantor, because the worst part hasn't happened yet. There was one question he could not let go of. One problem that consumed the rest of his life like a slow-burning fire. The Continuum Hypothesis. He had proved that some infinities are bigger than others. But is there an infinity in between? Something bigger than the countable numbers, but smaller than the real numbers? A middle infinity hiding in the gap? Cantor believed the answer was no. The jump was clean. Nothing between. He tried to prove it, year after year, decade after decade. He would believe he had a proof, write excited letters to colleagues announcing his breakthrough, then find an error, a gap, a step that did not hold. He would start again, build it up from nothing, work for months, find another error, start again. The problem consumed him. It followed him everywhere. He could not stop thinking about it. Each failure took a piece of him. Think about what this does to a man. He had already seen further into infinity than any human being in history. He had already been attacked, isolated, and broken once. And now, the one question that matters most, the capstone of everything he built, keeps slipping through his fingers. His mother died in 1896. His younger brother died in January 1899. The losses piled up. Cantor was hospitalized for the second time that year. Then, while he was still recovering, his youngest son Rudolf died suddenly on December 16, 1899. That broke what was left of him. He was hospitalized again, and again, and again. Each time he came back a little less, a little quieter, a little further from the world. Remember what I told you at the start. He died in a sanatorium, still asking to come home. Now you know how he got there. The years between 1900 and 1917 were a slow collapse. In and out of the sanatorium at Halle, fewer papers, fewer letters. He wrote to his wife constantly, begging to be released. The mathematical world had moved on, and he was still chasing the same question. Is there something between the infinities? In 1917, he entered the sanatorium for the last time. Germany was at war. Food was scarce. The hospitals were overwhelmed with soldiers. An old mathematician losing his mind was nobody's priority. On January 6, 1918, Georg Cantor died in a sanatorium, away from his family, malnourished. His last letters were to his wife. He wanted to come home. He was 72 years old. He never proved the continuum hypothesis. And here is the part that haunts me. In 1940, Kurt Gödel proved that the continuum hypothesis cannot be disproved. In 1963, Paul Cohen proved that it cannot be proved either. Think about what that means. The question that consumed Cantor. The question that ate away at his mind for 40 years. The question he died trying to answer. It was unanswerable, not because he was not smart enough, because mathematics itself does not contain the answer. It never did. It never will. He spent his life chasing a proof that cannot exist. I've thought about that for years. What it must feel like to pour your entire life into a question, only to discover, after you are gone, that the question itself was impossible. There is something unbearable about that. But here is what I want you to understand. While Cantor was dying in a sanatorium, His ideas were already conquering the world. David Hilbert, the most influential mathematician of the 20th century, listed the Continuum Hypothesis as the very first of his 23 most important unsolved problems. Hilbert also said something about Cantor that matters more than anything Kronecker ever said. No one shall expel us from the paradise that Cantor has created. Paradise. Not a disease, not corruption. Paradise. Kronecker, the man who had tried to destroy Cantor, died in 1891. Others would carry on his philosophical objections. Brouwer, Weyl, an entire school of thought that distrusted the infinite. But mathematically, they lost. Cantor's ideas became the foundation, not the footnote. And Hilbert was right. Every branch of modern mathematics uses Cantor's set theory. Every one. Analysis, topology, algebra, logic, probability. The language Cantor invented, alone under siege, became the language all of mathematics speaks, and physics followed. I told you about my path integrals, but it goes deeper than that. The Hilbert spaces I worked in, named after the same Hilbert who defended Cantor, are infinite dimensional. The quantum fields I studied contain an infinite number of degrees of freedom. The renormalization techniques I helped develop require comparing infinities against each other and finding what survives. None of that works without Cantor. None of it. The mathematics underneath quantum mechanics, underneath everything I ever did, rests on foundations that a man in Halley built while the world tried to stop him. I never had to fight for the right to use infinity. By the time I came along, the war was over. Cantor had won it. I think about the cost of being first. Galois saw the hidden structure of algebra and died at 20 with a bullet in his stomach. Ramanujan saw mathematics from somewhere beyond explanation and died at 32, his body broken by illness and years of isolation far from home. Cantor saw the architecture of infinity, and it broke him. Not quickly, not mercifully, slowly, over decades, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. I was lucky. I saw things too, in my own way. But by the time I looked into the infinite, Cantor had already mapped it. He had paid the price so that I could use infinity without fear. He died in a sanatorium, malnourished, separated from his family, still chasing a question that could never be answered. But his infinity, the one they called a disease, the one that cost him his career and his mind, is everywhere now. In every equation, in every proof, in every particle accelerator, in every discovery we make about how the universe works. They tried to expel him from the paradise he created. They failed. Cantor built the infinite, and the infinite is all we have.